A different kind of victory for fans of Novak Djokovic to celebrate. Supporters were joyous as the tennis men's world #1 had his appeal to remain in Australia upheld. A car soon emerged which fans believed contained the tennis star. Free Novak was chanted as the Serbian one was seemingly taken on his first drive to freedom. But it wasn't long before things soon turned nasty. Celebrations quickly descended into anarchy as police sprayed the crowds to keep order. At the iconic Rod Laver Arena, Djokovic took this picture and sent this message via social media saying, "For now, I cannot say more, but thank you for all standing with me." Djokovic's family held a press conference in Serbia where they reiterated their claim that he had done nothing wrong and had suffered harassment.
He's always fought for justice. He's not guilty of anything. He did nothing that is against their laws, and yet he suffered such torture, which we've already seen ourselves.
Novak has been called many names in many different press and countries around the world, but Novak is only fighting for the liberty of choice.
Interview transcripts released today by the court show that Djokovic, on arriving in Melbourne, told border officials he wasn't vaccinated, but had had COVID twice, most recently testing positive on December the 16th. When the interview resumed hours later, Djokovic was informed his visa was being cancelled. "I am really failing to understand what else you want me to provide to you," he told the official. The judge's ruling came after the government conceded they didn't give the Australian Open champion enough time to respond to the revocation of his visa. Australia's Minister for Immigration will now decide whether to overturn the decision, a controversial move which legal experts say isn't uncommon.
Now, some people might think that's quite extraordinary. We as immigration lawyers see this kind of decision-making quite a lot. We see things come back from the court, and the Migration Act operates as follows, is that even if a court or a tribunal makes a decision, the minister can kind of swoop over from the top and make a fresh decision if he or she at the time doesn't like what the decision was by the courts or by the tribunal. So extraordinary, but not in some other instances.
Do you think this will shine a light on people who are not as high profile as Novak Djokovic, who are stuck in the Australian immigration system?
Then Novak Djokovic could use this opportunity to say, look, 2 floors down in that hotel where he was staying, there was people who'd been detained in that hotel for 9 years who were asylum seekers. So really using this as a platform to shine the light, exactly as you say, on some of those less fortunate. I think Australia's immigration system has always been known to be very harsh and unforgiving. We as migration lawyers know that more than anyone else. But I think what this will shine a further light on is really some of the draconian powers and sort of godlike powers that the Minister for Immigration has.
One of the most high-profile athletes in the world has now found himself at the centre of a political and medical debate. The Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison is desperately trying to wrestle control of a situation that could define how the Australian public vote in the forthcoming elections.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Australian Labor MP, Dr Anne Ali, who's a member of the Parliamentary Law Enforcement Committee, and I started by asking her what she wants the Immigration Minister to do.
Well, right now it is up to the Immigration Minister. He needs to make a decision about whether or not Novak Djokovic's visa will be cancelled, which means that he will invoke his power to override the court's decision that was made today. This really has been a huge mess and has laid bare the inconsistencies and the lack of clarity in our border and immigration protocols.
But are you saying the system is a mess, therefore let him stay and let him compete?
Well, the court has decided that he has a right to stay and compete. He did have a visa, so he's made the trip to Australia to play in the Australian Open in good faith. I think the court's ruling is the court's ruling, and like it or not, that's what the court has said is the case.
So how angry are your constituents about the fact that he's here?
At the beginning there was a lot of anger about it, to be honest. People were, because people thought that there were different rules for different people. But I think as the court case has exposed, with the judge saying today, what more could this man have done, that people are starting to realise that the real issue here is those inconsistencies, is the fact that there was different information given, and people had different information. There's a lot more of the story to come out, I think. Right now, there's a lot of confusion about what exactly happened. There's also a lot of support for Novak Djokovic, particularly from the fairly large Serbian community in my electorate and in electorates across Australia.
Obviously, this is a federal matter in terms of controlling the border, but it was the state government in Victoria who control the medical exemption panel. So this is a state government screw-up as well, isn't it? And they're on your side.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, and yeah, I was saying to someone today, it's quite a surreal situation here in Australia. I live in Western Australia, a part of Australia where we have one case. My children live in the eastern states where they have tens of thousands of COVID cases a day. It is quite surreal that you have a country where there are different rules in different states, where there are different situations in different states, and you have a federal government that has quite frankly given up its responsibilities to the states with regards to border exemptions and who comes in and who comes out. So the system is actually quite a mess.
Right, so it's not just the federal government's fault then. I mean, you accept that the Victoria government is the one that led him to think that he had a valid medical exemption.
I think there are many, many pieces to this puzzle, to be honest. Tennis Australia has a role as well. Did Tennis Australia make a mistake? Were they part of it? But what really is the issue here is a lack of consistency, and that consistency is a federal government responsibility.
This is a big win for vaccine sceptics, isn't it?
I think so. I think it feeds right into the vaccine hesitancy or vaccine skepticism. So it does feed into that kind of conspiracy theory in a way as well. That and there is confusion. If you're double vaxxed, does that mean you're entitled to do this or to do that? And what happens if you're triple vaxxed? Or there are people who are double vaccinated and triple vaccinated who can't come home to their home state. And I'm dealing with a case at the moment. Somebody emailed me today, and I get emails every day.
Just finally, I mean, one of the concerns is that this is going to wreck the Australian Open and that we could see crowds booing Novak Djokovic.
I don't think it's Novak Djokovic's fault, to be honest. I stand by the opinion that his previous stance on refusing to say whether or not he was vaccinated, that I think that was wrong. But at the end of the day, as the judge said, what more could this man do? I believe, as was exposed in the courts today, that he acted on the information that he had, and that information was wrong. So there is fault to be laid in various places. Where that fault should ultimately sit is a matter that I think the courts should decide and will decide.
Anne Ali, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Krishna.